The playground of power is essentially a giant glass cage full of traps. In that place, honest people are like small fish bearing the glistening scales of sincerity, swimming with the illusion of using their purity to cleanse an entire stretch of murky water. They have no idea that everything from the oxygen they breathe to the food sources within that cage is held firmly in the hands of those in power. Those giant shadows stand patiently outside, observing the law of the big fish eating small fish as it unfolds exactly according to the script. Stepping into the gamble for fame, those from impoverished backgrounds who carry warm hearts are merely rustic wooden pawns, voluntarily walking onto a chessboard where every rule has been prearranged. They arrive with extreme innocence, believing that dedication and morality will be the ticket to reaching the summit. But in a place where every rung of the ladder is built upon secret compromises, honesty is not an asset. It is a fatal debt. The poor enter the game with an intense thirst to change their lives, yet their baggage is empty. The only thing they take pride in is their character and the integrity forged through years of hardship. They believe that if they simply work 10 times harder and commit no dishonest acts, the truth will prevail. That is a romanticized perspective, yet it is completely skewed regarding how the machine of manipulation operates. The house never deals the cards based on kindness. In an ecosystem maintained by interlocking interests and under-the-table handshakes, an individual who is too clean is actually a risk. When everyone is hunchbacked, the one with a straight back is considered a deformity. An individual who refuses to dip their hands in the mud is essentially refusing to become part of the alliance of interests. They become the grating pebble that jams the gears of the entire apparatus. To survive at the higher levels, the currency of transaction is no longer competence, but complicity. The puppet masters need people with flaws so they can be easily controlled. Someone with a weakness, greed, or a hidden mistake is a safe chess piece because they are easily commanded through fear. Conversely, a poor person with high self-esteem and no stain to be held over them is someone who cannot be controlled. Superiors look at them with suspicion, for a person who does not thirst for illicit money will never yield to orders that go against their conscience. Consequently, the machine begins to operate its mechanism of assimilation. It does not force one to do wrong immediately. Instead, it begins with small, subtle concessions that anyone would easily shrug off and ignore. Degeneration does not happen overnight. It gnaws at the soul like acid corroding metal. A good person may initially turn a blind eye to a colleague's minor infraction out of courtesy. Next time, they are forced to sign off on reports with juggled numbers, accompanied by whispers that this is for the greater good. Those in power are masters of psychological manipulation, turning dishonest acts into beautiful euphemisms like flexibility or the big picture. These small targets create a psychological effect that sucks people into a cycle they cannot escape. For the poor, the obsession with losing their rice bowl, their livelihood, and the position they traded sweat and tears for is their Achilles heel. Seizing this weakness, the system corners them into a position where they must choose between dignity and survival. Under that heavy pressure, the human psyche automatically produces rationalization mechanisms. Those who were once honest begin to convince themselves that they are only temporarily tainted, that they must climb higher to gain power before they can do good or change the rules of the game. But the pit of ambition is bottomless. Degeneration silently and radically transforms one's temperament. Each concession is a link in a chain, binding them to the quagmire. By the time they sit in the coveted chair, their hands are covered in compromises. The clear gaze of yesteryear is replaced by suspicion and cold calculation. The trap-filled playground has succeeded in molding a good person into the very image of the sinister villain they once detested. Privileges and benefits can turn a person of integrity into someone ruthlessly greedy at a dizzying speed. Many young people carrying noble ideals often deceive themselves with the illusion of changing things from the inside. They believe they can endure bowing and scraping at first to gather influence, then, upon reaching the peak, flip the chessboard to reconstruct a clean system. But that is the greatest deception of perception. The system's selection mechanism never yields a spot to someone who retains their original identity. The process of climbing toward fame is a process of molting, where every step of the ladder demands the discarding of a piece of one's conscience. By the time they touch power, they realize their hands look exactly like those they once wanted to overthrow. The original desire for change has evaporated, giving way to the instinct to protect the privileges they traded their soul for. It is bitter when abnormalities become the norm in an environment where individuals shield one another to profit together. Reality always holds a second, far more brutal script. That is when the poor person resolutely clings to their purity until the end. In this case, the system does not just discard them, it grinds them down to serve as an example. An individual who refuses to be complicit is a threat that breaks the collective's secret structure. The dealers never allow that danger to exist freely. They do not need grand gestures. The invisible tentacles of the system have thousands of ways to ruin a person's reputation and career. The surrounding environment will suddenly turn into a vacuum. No one communicates, no one cooperates, and every opportunity is slammed shut. Isolation is the first and most cruel punishment aimed at breaking the prey's will. When isolation proves ineffective, more sophisticated traps are set. No matter how careful a poor person is, it is difficult to avoid minor mistakes at work. The workplace is full of ambiguous regulations, where right or wrong depends on the perspective of the judge. A small error will be magnified into a serious violation. More frighteningly, when the entire machine needs a scapegoat to bear the consequences for those standing behind the curtain, the honest and non-partisan individual is the perfect choice. They are stripped of their achievements, their honor is smeared, and they are hurled out of the system with a blackened record. Arguments about the truth become a hopeless scream in the desert, because the ones holding the scales of justice are the very ones who wrote this cruel script. The devastation of this wheel does not stop at the individual, but spreads to their loved ones. Why is the family implicated? Because this game operates on the principle of total annihilation to extinguish any possibility of resistance. When the breadwinner, carrying so many expectations, is brought down, the entire economic and spiritual system around them collapses. Money is lost, and debts close in. Children are pointed at by malicious rumors. Spouses are harassed by the octopus tentacles of spite. The collapse of an honest person is of total destruction, robbing them of both their career and the minimal peace of their home. The greatest pain is not poverty, but the torment of seeing one's own integrity become a tool for others to trample upon the future of those they love. The confrontation between the honest poor and this giant machine is an uneven battle. Those born at the finish line, or those who have lost their conscience, view the struggle as a game of chess for entertainment, where risks are dumped on subordinates while benefits are seized for themselves. They have countless escape routes and shields of connections. As for the poor, they play with everything they have: their honor, their livelihood, and their family's future. When you bet your only precious possession at a mahjong table, where the opponents all have cards hidden up their sleeves, the losing outcome is predetermined. Sincerity at this point is no longer a quality to be praised, but becomes a cognitive blind spot that prevents them from seeing the prearranged schemes. The operation of high-level games always requires an exceptional ability to wear masks. The cheers or bright smiles in meetings are merely a coat of paint covering cold calculations. Good people, with their straightforward nature, cannot adapt to this frequency. They say what they think and do what they believe is right, unintentionally breaking the artificial balance of the system. In a play where all actors follow a script of lies to profit, a person who speaks the truth becomes a saboteur. The fury of the crowd will rain down upon the head of the one who dares to raise a discordant voice. There is no glory for that solitary courage, only a bitter purging. The art of manipulation also utilizes a sharp weapon, the burden of gratitude. Superiors are very skilled at bestowing small favors when the poor are at their most desperate. A promotion or financial help is designed like a velvet noose. When the time is right, that noose will tighten. Because they are heavy with the thought of repaying a debt, an honest person will torment themselves when asked to do something unethical to settle a debt of gratitude. The authority of the puppet master lies not in shouting, but in a pressurized silence and a gaze that reminds one of their indebtedness. Under that pressure, the final line of defense for kindness is breached, turning them into a tool for dark purposes without the need for physical coercion. The rules of the workplace are harsh laws that spare no one. Whether one carries a warm or cold heart, once caught in the whirlpool of calculation, all must follow the law of the pack. Kindness does not yield a profit in an environment measured by transactional value. If you cannot dissolve into it, you will certainly be discarded. This process happens naturally and ruthlessly, like a drop of fresh water that cannot change the salinity of the ocean and is instead swallowed by it. Final efforts to struggle only bring deep wounds and permanent trauma to the family, turning a beautiful aspiration into a lingering nightmare. The portrait of fame has no room for benevolence or innocence. It is a system programmed to consume greed and crush integrity. Outsiders may despise the degeneration, but only when inside the eye of the storm, where every survival mechanism is stifled, does one understand the manipulative power of this vortex. There are no miracles to protect a holy soul against layers of traps, nor is there any glory waiting for those who embrace morality only to receive a tragedy of empty hands. When one realizes that the seat of status is actually a machine that grinds down human dignity, will empty-handed honesty still harbor the illusion of borrowing the law of the wolf to protect the sheep?